The Evolution of American Democracy, A Journey Through Time. Introduction: The Origins of American Democracy. The story of American democracy is one of transformation, resilience, and ideals that have evolved over more than 2 centuries. In this exploration, we will trace the critical milestones of U.S. democracy from its revolutionary beginnings to the complexities of today's political system. It's a story that reflects not just the struggles of a nation, but the ideals that shaped it. At its core, American democracy is about representation, individual rights, and the ongoing struggle for equality. This journey begins in the 18th century, when a new nation emerged with bold promises for the future. Chapter 1: The Birth of the United States and the Concept of Self-Government. In 1776, America's founding fathers stood at the crossroads of history. After years of tension with British rule, 13 American colonies declared their independence from Britain. The American Revolution was a fight for freedom, but it was also a fight for something much more profound: the right of a people to govern themselves. This radical idea of self-government wasn't just a rebellion against a monarch. It was the beginning of a new political system in which the people, rather than a king, would have the ultimate authority. The Declaration of Independence, authored primarily by Thomas Jefferson, set forth the belief that all men are created equal and endowed with certain unalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This was revolutionary not just because it severed ties with Britain, but because it established the core values that would come to define American democracy. However, the challenge of creating a government based on these ideals was far from simple. After declaring independence, the fledgling nation needed a framework for governance. The Articles of Confederation, adopted in 1781, were America's first attempt at self-governance, but they proved ineffective. The nation was weak under this system, and the government lacked the power to enforce laws, collect taxes, or regulate trade. In 1787, delegates from the states convened in Philadelphia to draft a new constitution. The U.S. Constitution, ratified in 1788, created a federal government with a system of checks and balances, ensuring that no branch of government, executive, legislative, or judicial, could become too powerful. This system of separation of powers would go on to be one of the most significant aspects of American democracy. 2. The Bill of Rights and the Struggle for Individual Liberties. While the Constitution created the structure of government, it did not initially guarantee protections for individual freedoms. The founders understood the need to safeguard citizens' rights from potential governmental overreach, which was a real concern given the colony's experiences under British rule. This gap in the Constitution led to the drafting of the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, which were ratified in 1791. These amendments protected fundamental freedoms, including the freedom of speech, the press, religion, and the right to a fair trial. The Bill of Rights became the cornerstone of personal liberty in the United States, serving as a shield against governmental abuse of power. The right to vote was also a critical issue. While the Constitution allowed for a representative form of government, it initially limited suffrage to property-owning white men. Over time, however, the struggle for expanded voting rights became one of the central themes in the development of American democracy. 3. The Long Road to Equality: The Struggle for Civil Rights. Despite the promises of equality in the Declaration of Independence, the reality of American democracy for many citizens remained a distant dream. Enslaved Africans were considered property, not people, and had no rights under the Constitution. Even after the Civil War ended in 1865 and slavery was abolished with the passage of the 13th Amendment, racial discrimination persisted. The 14th and 15th Amendments, passed in the Reconstruction era, promised citizenship and voting rights to formerly enslaved individuals, but systemic racism and discriminatory practices like the Black Codes and later Jim Crow laws continued to disenfranchise African Americans, particularly in the southern states. It wasn't until the mid-20th century that the civil rights movement began to dismantle legal segregation and disenfranchisement. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and Malcolm X fought tirelessly for the recognition of African American rights, culminating in landmark legislation such as the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The civil rights movement marked a critical moment in the history of American democracy, proving that the nation's ideals could be expanded and that the promise of freedom and equality could be realized for all citizens, regardless of race. 4. Women's rights: expanding democracy for all. While African Americans were fighting for equality, women too faced a long struggle for their place in American democracy. Women had always played vital roles in American society, but they were denied full participation in political life. The suffrage movement, which gained momentum in the mid-19th century, was the first step toward women's full participation in democracy. Leaders like Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Sojourner Truth fought for women's rights, particularly the right to vote. Their efforts culminated in the passage of the 19th Amendment in 1920, granting women the right to vote. However, the struggle didn't end with suffrage. Women continued to fight for equal pay, reproductive rights, and equal opportunities in education and the workforce. The feminist movements of the 1960s and 1970s and the ongoing push for equal rights illustrate how American democracy has continued to expand to include more voices. 5. The rise of political polarization and the modern challenges of democracy. As the 20th century progressed, the democratic principles that had shaped the country continued to face challenges, especially in the political realm. The rise of political parties and ideological divisions led to the creation of a more polarized political landscape. The two-party system, which was never explicitly outlined in the Constitution, became entrenched in the American political system, often leading to gridlock and a focus on partisan victory rather than national unity. In recent decades, this polarization has deepened, with issues such as healthcare, immigration, climate change, and the role of the government becoming increasingly contentious. The growth of social media and the spread of misinformation have further complicated the democratic process, raising questions about the role of technology in shaping public opinion and policy. At the same time, there has been an ongoing fight for the rights of marginalized communities, including the LGBTQ+ community, immigrants, and people of color. The Black Lives Matter movement and the push for comprehensive immigration reform highlight the continued struggle for a more inclusive democracy. 6. Looking forward, the future of American democracy. The story of American democracy is still being written. The ongoing debates over voting rights, racial justice, healthcare, and climate change all underscore the fact that democracy is not a fixed entity, but a living, evolving system. As younger generations take up the mantle of leadership and activism, American democracy continues to be tested, renewed, and shaped by those who refuse to accept the status quo. The future of democracy in the United States depends on the engagement of its citizens. Voter participation, particularly in midterm elections, remains a challenge, but it's clear that those who vote, protest, and advocate for change have the power to influence the direction of the nation. While American democracy has faced significant challenges throughout its history, it has also proven to be remarkably resilient. As long as there are people willing to fight for their rights, to push for progress, and to challenge injustices, the promise of a government by the people, for the people, will continue to live on. Conclusion: a living democracy. The evolution of American democracy is far from over. As we look to the future, we must remember the lessons of the past, that democracy is fragile, that rights must be defended, and that equality is not a given, but a goal that must be actively pursued. The American experiment is a continuous one, and it's up to each generation to take responsibility for its future. Whether it's through voting, advocacy, or simply staying informed, every citizen has a role in ensuring that democracy remains a vibrant and meaningful force in the world. As we continue to grapple with the complexities of modern life, one thing is clear: the journey of American democracy is a testament to the power of the people, and that journey will continue as long as there are citizens who believe in the promise of a better tomorrow. If you like this content, like and subscribe for more captivating contents. Thank you.